Hello, gang. Tattooed Biker here with you. And tonight I have a mixed bag of strange and unidentified creature reports from viewers just like you. Now, I don't know what these things are, but people are seeing something. Something terrifying. Something that just doesn't belong. So we're going off the beaten path tonight. Better grab your compass and let's ride.
Number 1. Dear Tattooed, my cousin owns land in Burnett County, Wisconsin, where there's lots of hills and lots of deer. It's a tradition for all of us to hunt on his property. My dad, cousin, and all their friends, they pitched in to build a hunting shack on the property and put up tree stands. We hunt there on a schedule, so none of us are hunting in the same area at the same time, both for our safety and in hopes of getting a deer. My dad and I took an ATV and headed up a hillside. The sun wasn't quite up yet, and we wanted to get set for sunrise. We marked which hill we were going up on the schedule inside the shack. Nobody else was there yet, but, well, we marked it anyway, in case my cousin and his daughter showed up. We waited until about 9 a.m. and never saw a thing. Not even as much as a squirrel. We decided to go get some coffee and warm up and then head back out. I followed my dad down the path back to the ATV, and we'd stop ever so often to listen for deer. The only noises that I heard were my footsteps and my dad's. About halfway to the ATV, I heard something else. It only happened when my dad and I walked. When my dad and I walk during deer hunting, I mimic his footsteps, so we make less noise. I step at the same time as him. However, something behind me was making noise. It was like something was mimicking my footsteps. I spun around and peered into the trees. The sun still wasn't up over the top of the hill yet, so we were in quite a bit of shade. I didn't see anything, so I continued to follow my dad down the hill. But then I heard it again. This time I turned around when we were still walking and, well, I saw something ducking behind a tree. A pale face poked out from about 30 yards up the hill and then hid behind the tree again. It poked out again, and this time stayed, just staring down at us. I stopped and I tapped my dad's shoulder. He turned and he saw it too. "Get to the four-wheeler," he whispered with urgency. And trust me, I didn't hesitate. I stared it down as my dad started up the ATV and we departed. The face's shoulder came out from behind the tree, followed by the rest of its gnarly, malformed, but weirdly small, human-like body. My dad hit the throttle and we got back to the hunting shack as soon as we could. No one else was there, so we got in the truck and left. I haven't been in those woods since. My dad has, and actually got a deer this past season. And he acts like this never happened. But I still think about it far too often. Signed, Tim. Number 2. Hey TB, one night in April 2021 while I was sleeping, I heard a loud pop, similar to a firecracker, but not quite as loud. I thought it might have been my computer or some sort of electrical short, so I woke up and looked at my equipment to see if there was a fire or something. I didn't see anything in the dark, so I eventually relaxed and shifted to lay on my back to go back to sleep, looking up at the ceiling. Within a few seconds, I started to notice some sort of vague, shadowy figure, as if it were standing next to my bed and waving a hand over me. I've seen shapes like this before, so I watched the hand out of curiosity. Then the hand went away and I felt the side of my bed dip down as if something was pushing down on it. Slow enough as if not to scare me, yet firm enough to be very noticeable. This was surprising, but I wasn't scared. I looked to where the shadow was standing, and out from the dark, for a brief moment, a reptilian humanoid appeared there, wearing a plain and slightly loose shirt, and holding a clipboard with his left hand, and holding a pen or something in his right as if he was making a note. His head was in profile to me, turned to his left, so I was looking at the right side of his face. His eye stood out to me the most. He looked almost concerned, with round pupils, fairly large in size, and almost cartoony looking, but kind. I could see scales outlined on his skin, and he had larger scales along his prominent brow. He had a smallish sort of beak nose, and it looked like his upper lip covered down to his bottom jaw, with no discernible lips or mouth. Its shoulders were very broad, more broad than most humans, and he seemed a bit shorter than a typical human, if I had to guess. I didn't see anything below where his elbows sat around his midsection, so I don't know what his feet or legs looked like. The way it looked was like he and his details were outlined in the lights you see when you press on your eyes. That weird kind of greenish, yellowish, slightly rainbowy look. Quite bright in the dark, but still kind of faint. It was very brief, like only 3 seconds, but very detailed and in the center of my vision. I have no idea what to make of it, but I know I'll never forget it. I tried drawing him once, but unfortunately, I don't have it with me, and I'm not much of an artist. I still wonder a lot about it. Signed, Anonymous. P.S. This happened in Ames, Iowa. Number 3. Hi, TB. I think I saw a pterodactyl, or a pterosaur, along the coast of northern central California. This happened on July 27th, 2021. Me and my girlfriend were on a road trip without any end in mind, and we were just driving up the coast and decided to sleep on the beach. I'm not sure exactly where, but I'd say within about an hour's drive south of Monterey. As we were hanging out on the beach, we both noticed a huge figure in the sky. Slowly, as it got nearer, I realized that this thing wasn't a bird. I've seen hawks, golden eagles, owls, vultures, condors, but none of them looked like this. It also didn't fly like a bird. It flapped what appeared to be leathery wings very slowly. I swear my first thought was that I was seeing some kind of dragon. What's more, both of us saw it. We both stared at it, awestruck, for a few seconds before I caught its profile against the moon, and it very strikingly looked to be a pterosaur. In the few moments we witnessed this thing, it was like reality just froze and gelled around the moment, like my focus was being directly pointed at this thing. I've found that same sensation when I've had other paranormal experiences. It's almost like the universe wants you to pay attention to this moment. I just wanted to share. Signed, Anonymous. Number 4. Hi, Biker. I heard you in one of your videos the other night talking about the crawler humanoids in the Sierra Nevada range. I had a strange encounter there, just outside of Tahoe City about 8 years ago that I still just can't explain. I was solo backpacking, and I'm extremely familiar with the Mount Dana area. I was wanting to test out some new gear before I took a more serious backpacking trip. It was about 5 p.m., and I was up around 7,000 feet on a ridge with a breathtaking and interesting outcropping. The stone was very geometric, and when you knocked on it, it rang like a hollow storage tank. I kept some pieces of the rock because, well, I found them interesting. As I'm putting the rocks that I'd picked into my backpack for the hike down, back to the spot where I'd selected earlier for a camp, I hear this fluttering noise, not unlike a pigeon landing. I turned my head instinctively, but without much thought, to see a bird, and what I see instead is a huge praying mantis. This mantis thing was at least 5 feet long. It stood erect and its abdomen was curved to a very extreme angle, allowing it to stand roughly chest high to be. In some respects, it looked and acted almost human. I was crouched down so the thing was eye level. It grabbed a piece of food that I'd been eating and stared at me as it ate it. Then its wings popped out and it just flew off. I suddenly felt extremely nauseous and actually developed a bad migraine afterwards. Now I can chalk the migraine up to dehydration, but the memory is so real. What do you think I encountered? I tried to get a photograph of it, but it took off before I could get my phone. Thanks for reading. Signed, Anonymous.
Quick narrator's note here. I've received a variety of strange accounts from the Sierra Nevada mountains, including mantis humanoids, encounters by campers and bikers. Are they otherworldly beings? I just don't know. But these mountains, they definitely hold a lot of secrets.
Number 5. Dear Biker, my grandfather, who lives in northeastern Pennsylvania, saw something weird one time while hunting. He said from his vantage point, which might have been about 45 yards away, he says he swears that he saw a huge black panther, or what looked like a panther but much bigger. He said it moved very cat-like, with a slinking gait. It saw him, and crouched super low as if to hide. He said that he raised his gun and the creature took off up the hill, and was taking long strides like what a mountain lion would do. And then it was suddenly gone. That was about 12 years ago. My aunt, she owns a horse farm up in those parts, and she had a beautiful black stallion that was her pride and joy. She said she found him one day with huge puncture wounds around the back of his neck and claw marks running down the length of his shoulder. There were rumors that bobcats were attacking cattle in the area, but she was certain that these weren't bobcat claw marks. The horse was in really bad shape and it almost died. And I myself have seen an enormous black dog in the front yard of our cabin up there. It was at night and I was looking out the window before heading to bed, and that's when I saw this thing, this enormous solid black creature. It had to have been at least the size of a wolf. It saw me looking at it and, well, it suddenly ran straight for me. I jumped away from the window, which made the curtain that I had pulled back fall back across the glass. I thought for sure I was going to hear barking and snarling at the window, but instead I heard nothing. So I slowly peered out, and this creature was just gone. It was one of the spookiest things that I've ever witnessed. Signed, Kyle. Number 6. Dear Biker, before my husband and I were married, we went overnight hiking on one of our first dates. It was about a 5-mile hike to our destination, the Bolt Camp Shelter, which is basically just a little wooden shack in the middle of nowhere in the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest. The hike was beautiful. The sun was going down and there were many ancient Douglas fir trees with hollow bases. The sun was setting through them, and they looked like little fairy abodes with warm hearth fires burning within. There were little wooden footbridges here and there, and we could imagine little trolls living under them. As night fell, we started seeing all these bioluminescent mushrooms on fallen logs, glowing in an impossible shade of green. The entire trip was purely magical. We arrived at the shelter, built a fire, ate dinner, had a few drinks, and went to sleep. Now, we were sleeping under just one side of the shelter because it was half collapsed because a tree had fallen on it at some point. I woke up in the middle of the night, cold, because the fire was out. Of course it was pitch black. My husband was sleeping towards the outside of the shelter with me on the inside. facing near the back. And that's when I saw it. A thing. Whatever it was, floating around inside the shelter. I don't know how to describe it other than a pinkish, gossamer, spiderweb-looking thing just flying through the air, turning and twisting over and over on itself. It was really quite lovely, and I wasn't afraid of it, but I was fascinated. I really wanted to wake him up and ask him if he could see it, but I was afraid it would either disappear or he wouldn't be able to see it, and then he would think I was crazy. I mean, I barely knew the guy at this point, so I just watched it for a bit, and then fell back asleep and said nothing. That was until a few months later, when we'd gotten more familiar and we were just reminiscing about our trip. I told him about it, and his mouth dropped open. So we had packed up and left the next day, and I had dropped him off at his house. That night, he was out on his porch having a beer when he saw the exact same thing, twisting, floating through the air, seemingly almost a living thing. It dissipated near some shrubs near his house, and he was just staring, wondering what the heck he just saw when a pair of glowing red eyes appeared. It freaked him out, and he booked it back inside, and never spoke of it to anyone until I told him about my own experience back at the camp. I just wanted to see what you and your listeners thought about this. What could it have been? Thanks for reading. Signed, Melissa. And there it is. 6 strange and unidentified cryptid reports from real people. So, what did you guys think about these stories? I'm anxious to hear your thoughts and theories in the comments below, but please, keep it respectful for the witnesses. And if you have any encounters or experiences that you'd like to share, just send them to the email in the description and your story may just wind up in a future video. Anyways, thanks so much for watching. And until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, stay safe, and I'll be seeing you on down the road a ways. Biker out.